Colin was about to squash the new features back into his chest when Ted stopped him. Colin, wait, you have all of the appearances of a female body. Maybe we can use that to our advantage. Colin was about to retort when Ted's cell phone chimed, forestalling further conversation. Ted answered the phone. Hello, Ted here, yes? I'm at home. Oh no, you're sure it's him? I see, now wait a minute, that's just supposition, oh. She is? No, I left soon after and didn't see anything, okay, I'll come in and make a statement, bye. Ted then put down the phone and looked at Colin with concern. What's up, Ted? Colin asked warily. Well, my friend, they found parts of a body near the explosion site. They say it is your body there, as they recovered what they assumed was Beth's body earlier. According to them, you are dead, and they are blaming you for the cause of the explosion and for the death of Beth, whose body as of 10 minutes ago has disappeared. The police want to ask me some questions, as I was the last to be seen with her body. Oh no, I was in the restroom, Beth must have been fiddling with the reaction in the vat. Couldn't they tell it wasn't a male body they found? Well, there were only a few charred pieces of flesh and a few bone fragments, according to the police, hardly enough for any positive ID. They assumed that because they pulled your body out and it looked like Beth's, what they found was your own. Well, let's get on the phone and set them right, Colin argued. Wait, Colin. Think about that for a moment. If you turn up alive now, looking as you do, not only will you be in serious trouble, but you may be held responsible for the death of Beth. I mean, here you are in her clothes, being mistaken for her, that's not good. I think you would end up being charged with manslaughter, at least. But if I explain that I was on the toilet and had nothing to do with it, surely that would be enough, argued Colin. Was there any person that may have seen you in there that could back you up? Ted countered. Well, no, I did hear the janitor in there, but he didn't see me. So, knowing you on a Friday afternoon, I suppose you were relaxing? Ted asked. At Colin's nod, Ted continued. Then if questioned, he could say that there was a person there that was relaxing? Ted left the implications unsaid. Oh. I see what you're getting at, I'd still be responsible for Beth's death, because while she was working on the experiment, I was relaxing in the restroom, Colin scowled. Yeah, you could say that relaxing could send you to a holding cell and looking like you are now, you could be either locked away in a psychiatric facility or worse. Worse? What could be worse than that? Colin demanded. Think about it, a man suddenly shows up with the body of a woman after a near-fatal explosion, a body that can be molded like clay? What do you think would happen if that information got out? Damn, you're right, I'd be locked away while they threw all the tests in the book at me. I'd be lucky to survive, let alone be a free agent anymore, Colin said morosely. Okay, what can I do? I can't show my face anywhere now. Ted looked at his friend seriously for a moment before making his next suggestion. Stay at my place for now until we figure things out. One thing for sure, we need to do some tests. Hey, don't look like that at me, you know we need to do it, if only to see what your body is capable of and what its limits are, Ted replied, cutting off the objection Colin was about to utter. What should I wear? I might have something of mine that would fit me, Colin asked. No, we need to disguise the fact that you are some sort of weird-looking half-female oddity. I have a nosy neighbor, remember? She might, if questioned, say something about seeing you if the police start snooping around looking for Beth's body. Look, you still have your long hippie-styled hair. Why not continue wearing Beth's old clothes? At least they fit, and we may be able to brush your hair in a temporary feminine style for the moment. She will probably think you're just a girlfriend and not take too much notice. Like that's such a great idea, Colin snorted in disgust. Look Colin, I don't have to help you, I could just say forget it and leave it to you to sort out, Ted snapped back. Sorry, Ted, I shouldn't have jumped down your throat. It's just pretty hard to go from being a normal 30-year-old guy to looking like somebody's girlfriend, all in one day, Colin said, sadly. Me too, I wouldn't really have left you to sort it out alone. We've been best friends for a long time now, and that's not going to stop because you have a few little problems. Ha ha! I wouldn't say this is a little problem, looking down at his new chest. I don't have a thing to wear now, Colin laughed sarcastically. Plus, I don't have a valid identity. Just what the heck am I going to do now? I have an idea, but first get dressed again in those clothes of Beth's and we'll see how feminine we can get you to look, Ted suggested. Half an hour later, a couple walked outside Colin's place to get into Ted's car. The slightly shorter of the two was wearing a yellow dress and hose and walked unsteadily in her low-heeled shoes. She had a nice figure but was walking rather woodenly as if unsure of her attractiveness. Her dark hair was pulled back into a high ponytail with bangs at the front. Her eyes were hidden behind a pair of masculine-looking sunglasses, and her lips were slightly tinged with pink. Nobody would have thought her out of place with her arm in arm with the tall dark-haired man beside her. People would have been shocked if they heard the conversation that went on in the car as it drove off. I don't believe I let you manipulate my face like this, a soft woman's voice came out of Colin's pink high-gloss-covered lips. Well, your Adam's apple was rather prominent. All I did was push it upwards, tightening the cords and giving you a voice that suits the overall look. Remember those first years at pre-med I did before turning to research? It finally came in useful. Pushing it back into your throat so it wouldn't be seen was the next logical step, replied Ted, defending himself. And the cheekbones? Colin asked. Look great, answered Ted quickly. At least you look and sound female now, and not some half-man/half-woman creature that would stick out like a sore thumb, came Ted's consolidating argument. Soon they arrived at Ted's place, and Ted escorted Colin arm in arm into his home without drawing any suspicious looks from his neighbor. So far, so good. Ted asked Colin to make himself at home while he went and picked up a few things they would need and to give the police a statement. Colin was happy to stay out of sight, looking as he did. The drive over had made him feel like he was on display, like some prize ready to be won and unwrapped. The fact that he had gotten away with looking like a normal woman, with only a few casual glances from other drivers, didn't make him feel particularly proud, just more depressed that his once masculine body now made it so easy to pass as a woman. He walked around Ted's place, checking out his friend's sculptures. Colin knew that Ted's passion was molding busts and other full-body sculptures in his spare time. Peeking into Ted's bedroom, he was amazed at what looked like a full-scale cast of his now ex-coworker Beth. Checking it out closely, Colin could see it was made from some sort of body cast because the details were that accurate. Colin knew Ted used to date Beth a while ago, and must have had it done then. The model was nude and even the crotch was clearly detailed. Every feature of the original had been faithfully reproduced, even down to the fingerprints. Colin was curious as to how it was made and resolved to ask Ted once he was back. Ted went back to the facility to see the police and to see what he could find out about any new developments. He was able to pass the police cordon around the entry, due to him being a key witness to Beth's death. An inspector took another statement from him concerning her disappearance. A germ of an idea festering in the back of Ted's mind made him ask the inspector if Beth hadn't just gotten up and walked off. Huh? What are you trying to pull here, Mr. Jenkins? I don't consider that in very good taste considering that the woman died today, the inspector demanded angrily. No disrespect meant, just that maybe she wasn't dead after all. I mean, did anyone check her vitals? I know that when I saw the concrete resting on her head, it seemed impossible for her to have survived. I had placed the blanket over her head as soon as the rescue guys lifted the block clear of her. I don't recall seeing any blood or brain tissue. Was any found on the floor later? I know the light was bad down there. Maybe we were all mistaken, and she could be wandering around somewhere, hurt and confused. Ted was pushing at clouding the issue on whether Beth was indeed dead or alive. Ted waited while the inspector took on board this fresh viewpoint. He called to one of the rescuers that was still on site and asked a few questions. At first, the man emphatically stated the woman had died of massive head injuries, but under closer questioning, having brought up the points Ted had made, and the fact that no body was forthcoming, the rescuer admitted those points were valid. Having sown the seeds of doubt, Ted asked if any personal belongings had been retrieved from below. The inspector pointed to a room where anything of a personal nature had been stored. Ted thanked him and walked casually away to look. Entering the room alone, Ted quickly sorted through the damaged belongings that remained. A purse caught his eye, and upon opening it, found it belonged to Beth. This cheered Ted up, and made his wacky idea more attainable. Now, all he had to do was convince Colin to go along with it. Driving away, Ted made a quick detour before finally going home. An enticing smell invaded his nostrils as he opened the front door. Calling out for Colin, he found the sight of the feminized man cooking rather humorous. "What's for dinner, honey?" he called out with a grin. "Goulash, and that's Mr. Honey to you, bozo," came Colin's quick rejoinder as he turned to smile at Ted. "Whoa! Somebody got into their role quickly. What happened to that miserable sod I left not long ago? You seem awfully comfortable acting out the girlfriend bit." "I may have to keep you on," Ted laughed, continuing the light banter with his friend. "Harumph! I cook all day and I don't even rate a kiss," Colin pouted, petulantly, pouring it on thick. "Well, I might consider that later, once you change into what I got for you," Ted said softly, all the while looking at Colin thoughtfully. "You got something for me? What is it, a quick change back into male kit set?" Colin asked, getting serious for the moment. "No, I stopped off at Beth's place to pick up some clothes for you." "Clothes? Oh no, you're serious about me being your girlfriend, aren't you?" Colin complained as he turned back to stir the goulash. "You got into Beth's place? How did you pull that off? Look, we need to do some tests, some of which will require you to go out to the right people. That means looking normal. Now, if normal means looking like a woman temporarily, then that's what we have to go with. I have an idea that will give you a valid identity. The police now have serious doubts about whether Beth is dead or not, due to a little help from me. I then retrieved her purse and used her own keys to get into her place," Ted painstakingly explained. "How is the fact that Beth may be alive going to help us, huh?" Colin demanded angrily, putting his hands on his widened hips. "This idea I had, well, it means Beth will return to the living, you will become her exact duplicate. I still have her complete body cast I made when we were going together. With that, we can mold you into her, right down to her fingerprints. You see, she didn't wear anything over her body but a coating of oil when I made it. So every dimple, every feature was exactly duplicated. You will be her exact double, my friend," Ted said triumphantly. Colin was silent as he digested Ted's proposition. As much as he wanted to rage against becoming any more female-looking, having a valid identity would help, while carrying out whatever tests were needed to find out if this situation could be reversed. At least he now knew how the sculpture had been created. He felt things were rushing up on him faster than he could handle, but then time was of the essence if he wanted to pull off this temporary, at least he hoped it was temporary, deception. Colin turned to Ted and shrugged his acceptance, before telling him to stir the pot while he got changed. Ted suddenly felt guilty, knowing he had put Colin on the spot, having set up his brainwave of an idea without discussing it with him. His fear that the plan would be dismissed out of hand by Colin if he'd known about it beforehand had prompted him to basically set him up so he couldn't refuse. Even though Ted honestly thought it was the best and only option, he regretted the small deceit to get Colin to agree to it. Sometime later, while Ted was still deep in thought, thinking about Colin and the remarkable changes he had recently undergone, Colin was almost ready. Colin had stripped off and stood naked while he opened the suitcase full of Beth's clothes that Ted had selected. He was curious to see what he'd look like in some of the clothes Ted had selected. It wasn't something he would have considered in his male shape, although, if he was honest with himself, he had occasionally wondered what it felt like for women when they wore those sexy tight dresses. He'd had a small taste of it one Halloween, where he'd gone to a party as a female witch in a black dress and a fake hooked nose. But he hadn't gone all the way, preferring to wear his usual male underwear, a stuffed bra being his only concession to the overall look. This was a totally different matter. He was about to experience something every woman did, every day. Colin shivered in anticipation as he lifted the fragile fabrics out of the case. Deciding to go all out in an attempt to shock, Colin pulled on the satin panties with hardly a qualm. A bra in the same shade of purple was put on, not without a little fumbling and some contortions. Colin was surprised how nice it felt to have his Ted-made chest features held that way. A silky slip followed, along with a fresh pair of pantyhose. The feeling of the slip brushing against his nylon-encased legs was an experience in itself. Colin realized that he had at last got that opportunity to understand firsthand just what women felt wearing clothes that weren't plain boring cotton or wool. Colin found a nice dress in a shimmery material that altered color as he moved it in the light, becoming first blue then purplish depending on the angle. He slipped it over his head, thankful that it was stretchy enough to go down over his chest. Shoes with a 2-inch heel were next, before he spotted the makeup in a small clear-lidded case. Colin wasn't anywhere ready for all that yet. He did open the case and checked some of the powders and creams with his finger to see what they felt like on his skin and if they had any particular smell. Colin saw the lipstick tubes and started opening them and rotating the bases so that the gleaming waxy sticks rose from their mysterious concealment. The scents begged to be tasted, and curious, he tried a few on his lips. The slick feeling was strange, but kind of exciting too. Rethinking his no-makeup decision, Colin tried to see if he could do it without looking like a clown. After a few botched attempts and many muttered words, he settled for a little mascara to lengthen his lashes and a touch of lipstick to make his lips stand out, before checking his look in the mirror. Not bad, he thought, but a little jewelry wouldn't go astray. Checking, he saw in a small velvet bag that Ted had brought some of Beth's earrings and necklaces. The earrings were for pierced ears, something Ted had overlooked. Colin was about to put them back when he had a thought. Pushing the spike of the earring against his ear and keeping the pressure on, it started to enter as the flesh seemed to flow around it, without pain. It didn't take long before it was completely through, and Colin repeated it on the other ear. He found putting the keepers on then was a fiddly job. One necklace later, and a dab of perfume courtesy of Ted's selection, and Colin was ready. Ted was shocked when he turned at the distinctly feminine sound of clicking heels, as Colin sashayed in, trying to emulate the feminine wiggle all true women are naturally born with. "Oh wow! You look fabulous," gushed an awed Ted. Colin felt pleased that his effort to impress was fully appreciated, but oddly uncomfortable in the way Ted was looking at him. It wasn't the look he'd been used to getting from his old friend, but one he'd seen in Ted's eyes when they had spotted an attractive woman walking past. It made him feel like he was just the easy target for the circling predator. Ted must have realized that his appreciative look at the new Colin was making him uncomfortable and, not wanting to put his friend under any more stress, apologized. "Look man, I'm sorry if my looking at you in my usual appreciative way is making you uneasy. It's just you look darn good as a woman. I'll try not to stare next time. I don't really know how you're staying sane with all this. I'd be a wreck by now if it had happened to me. Next time, just slap my face, okay? I guess I need to get used to it, at least I know you'll not want to go any further than look," giggled Colin in his feminine voice. "True, now let's eat dinner, I'm starving," replied a relieved Ted. They sat down to dinner, although Ted couldn't resist seating Colin as he would any other woman. Colin accepted the courtesy, not wanting to make an issue of it. He remembered at the last minute to brush the skirt forward as he sat, having seen it countless times before. He was conscious of the differences in his attire and tried to act according to his new appearances, knowing that soon he would be interacting in public as a female. His countless hours of watching Beth strut sexily past his desk, while he wondered idly what she was like in bed, were paying off. He even managed to flick at his hair in a manner Beth did unconsciously. "Colin? We need to get you used to answering to Beth, if we are going to pull this deception off. In fact, we need you to use the feminine pronoun, so we don't get caught out." Ted argued. "We get caught out?" Colin/Beth asked curiously. "Don't you mean me? And oh, as soon as I make you into Beth, we are both involved. If you slip up, then we are both screwed. I have just as much to lose as you, maybe more." "Huh? More?" Colin asked. "Yes, at least you're just the victim here, and forced to play along with my idea. Whereas I've deliberately planned to pull a deception in the death of Beth and having you substitute for her," Ted answered honestly. "I have another question, before we do anything else," Ted continued. "When I found you, or rather what I thought was Beth, your head was crushed down to just 2 inches, and yet you recovered. What is different now that you can't go back to your original body shape?" Ted asked speculatively. I don't know, confessed the newly named Beth. All I remember was the block hitting me and bouncing off my head before it started pressing it flat. I don't remember any pain, just I felt my face flattening, and then everything went dark. I woke up sometime later in the ambulance, with a blanket over my body. Beth/Colin answered. Wait, you said it bounced first before it started to flatten your head? Ted asked excitedly. Yes, it bounced, why? Is that important? Beth/Colin queried. Beth, do you trust me? Because I want to do something that may seem harsh, but if my theory is correct, you will feel no pain, nor suffer any damage, Ted implored, getting enthusiastically. Trust you, of course I do, Beth/Colin insisted. Go ahead then. Ted went into the hallway and returned with his old baseball bat, and before Beth/Colin could open his mouth, Ted swung the bat against Beth/Colin's head with a solid thud. Beth/Colin's head bounced away from the impact, but no crushing injury resulted, nor did he cry out in pain. He looked at Ted accusingly, before the implications of the results of the massive blow sank in. Amazingly. That didn't hurt, Ted, I should be bleeding with a crushed skull and unconscious from that, he exclaimed, wonderingly. There's not even a mark, Ted added. So, what are your conclusions? Beth/Colin asked, seeing from Ted's demeanor that he was about to reveal a theory. Okay, but remember this isn't conclusive, it's just a theory. I think there are 3 things that can happen to you. 1. Sharp or sudden impacts, or maybe any impacts at all, do no damage to you. They don't distort or shift out of shape, not even a little bit. Heck, you might even be invulnerable to certain things. That's why your head recovered its shape and those indentations in your arm from the grill. They were caused by debris falling on you. 2. Pressure exerted on your body can change your shape, as long as it's of sufficient duration. Just a gentle poke won't leave a mark, but hold that finger long enough and you will retain the impression. 3. When pressure or stress exceeds the body's normal tolerance, before bones might break or crush, it causes the body to transform into a state that allows gross distortion without damage or pain. Once that stress is removed, the body returns to its normal shape. Whatever that might be, depending on how extreme the stress was, Ted finished, satisfied he had it mostly figured out. That still leaves a lot that's unexplained. What about the internal organs in that extreme situation? My brain must have been compressed too, yet it suffered no damage, no damage, no damage, Beth/Colin repeated jokingly, twitching his head robotically as he did so. I think there's a screw loose, let me get my tools, laughed Ted, feeling glad Beth/Colin was taking it so well. So, what's next? When do I become Beth for real? Asked Beth/Colin. Right now, Ted replied, answering the other's question. After Ted had brought in the mold of Beth from the garage, he laid the top half on the floor and had Colin strip out of his clothing until he was nude, except for a bathing cap that confined his long hair. Ted told him that the original Beth had worn the same one when the mold was made. Flushed from embarrassment, standing naked in front of Ted while looking like a woman, Beth/Colin was only too pleased to get into the mold. It felt uncomfortable, as his body didn't match her proportions. Ted had to push at his legs to get them to fit into the mold. Colin's chest was aligned so that it matched the impressions in the mold, and his body was positioned so that the mold would align with his natural features. Ted carefully placed the bottom half of the mold on top of Colin, pressing it down onto his back while making sure Colin stayed within the mold's boundaries. Once the mold edges met and Colin could not move an inch, Ted fastened the mold together with clips he had designed for this purpose.